Welcome back, ladies and gents. You are listening to the NTC podcast, episode 43. I am joined by fellow contributor of the No Trade Clause website, Ali Shafique. If you guys have seen any of our graphics on Twitter, Instagram, you know this man's work. He just put out a graphic actually just the other day about extensions, which we're about to get into on this episode. So we'll definitely get into that. Ali, always good to have you on, man. I hope it's been a great past few weeks for you. Hope you had a great summer. Great to see you at Summer League, man. And excited to chop it up, man. It's always a good time. We're gonna have some words on this one. So
yeah. Listen. It's gonna be a fun episode. Always a good time to chop it up, man. Good time. Anytime with anyone with the NTC crew, man. It's Summer League was amazing. We got a nice little hiatus, but it's time to buckle down and get ready for the season because it's right around the corner.
Yes, sir. It's time to buckle down, get back to business. We got a lot on our plate, believe it or not. Even though it's preseason, there's some drama that we need to get into, man. So we're going to chop it up.
Welcome to the NBA.
Yes, sir. It never stops, 24/7. You never know. So before we get into this podcast, just want to shout out Bet99 Sportsbook, the official betting partner of No Trade Clause. We're excited to have them on board as a partner here. And it's going to be a great relationship. We're already having some great collaborations with them. So if you're looking for a betting partner, someone to get involved with, like Elise said, the basketball season is right around the corner. We're less than 10 days from the regular season start. Go ahead and check out their website. We also have our podcast on their site. So if you're looking for another place to check out our episodes, we have that available for you as well over on their site. So hit them up and get involved in betting before we get started with things. So Ali, man, where do we start with this, man? We have extension talks. Let's start here. The drama level, I would say, is low to mid. And then as we get into it, we're going to ramp up to the extreme levels of drama. So if you're cool with that, man, we'll just kind of lay it out like that.
I love it.
Let's get it going, man. First off, extension season is in full swing. We talked about CJ McCollum on our prior podcast. This time around, Steven Adams is back with the Memphis Grizzlies. So as reported by Woj, just the other day, Steven Adams is back with the Grizzlies for a 2-year deal. So when it comes to Adams, man, I mean, he got a 2-year extension. He's sticking with the Grizzlies here. He's been a great interior presence for them for the past year or so. It looks like it's a 2-year, $25 million extension. So that puts him at 3 total years now left with the Memphis Grizzlies. So I know people raise some eyebrows here, initially, when he was brought in, and you think about what kind of player he is. Not one of the crazy difference makers in our league, but obviously he's had a positive impact on Memphis. And I think a big reason why they extended him is because of the relationship he has with Jaren Jackson Jr. on the front line. As we know, Jaren Jackson Jr. is extremely talented, great 3-point stroke, great interior defender. He actually, I think, garnered some votes for Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's taken some great strides in that area, which is positive. But at the same time, if you're playing him at center, it's more of a in spurts type of thing as opposed to a full-time role for him. He gets in foul trouble. Exactly. It'd be great to play him at center, but his play style doesn't really fit with that. And he gets into foul trouble. He's very foul prone when he plays at that position. So it's almost like the same relationship that Towns has with Gobert. Towns stretches the floor. Gobert is that strong interior presence. Adams does the same for Memphis. So it's not a surprise to see him stick with this team because it allows Jaren Jackson to be at his natural position, which is not a full-time rim protector, more of a roamer, which is good at his size with his mobility, and then stretch the floor, get a lot of threes up, and kind of allow a unique advantage for Memphis on that end. So what are your thoughts on this extension? Were you surprised at all? Is this kind of in line with his value here, Steven Adams? It wasn't too reach, so I don't think it was a stretch by Memphis at all, considering the role he plays for this team.
Yeah, so he's guaranteed a roughly about 12.5 per year, and the deal was kind of interesting because I wasn't frankly expecting it. I thought that Memphis would. My first thought went to the fact that they were a potential 2023 cap space team,
Mm-hmm.
and right now they are slated to have roughly about 5 million of like functional cap space remaining in order, for 2023, which was interesting. So it looks like they really are trying to double down. I felt like that was an opportunity for them in 2023 to be able to add some, talent that maybe fit their age range and, be able to use that cap space before the Desmond Bain extension kicks in, before, that roster is going to get expensive. Brandon Clark is extension eligible as well. So I thought that maybe Steven Adams might be the guy that would get left out, sadly. But I do think that with Memphis building on top of what they built this year and the last few years, Steven has played a wonderful part of this team this year. And, from a culture perspective, from a leadership perspective, from the all NBA vibes perspective, that team really gets along and they gel well. And Adams has played an important role. And I do think that at that price point, you can't really say no.
Yeah, I like that for sure. Good value for them. And like you brought up a good point when it comes to their 2023 and going forward, their cap space situation, or rather the lack of that space. Brandon Clark, I mean, Dylan Brooks is another one. I mean, he's going to be
Yeah.
unrestricted next year. So, I mean,
Yep.
they have a lot of pending decisions when it comes to their players, when it comes to maintaining this core. It's going to get really expensive really quickly because as we see Ja with that max extension, like you got to pay to play in this league. And they're quickly finding that out year over year with their bill going up. But if you can lock in good quality big men like Adams at that price point, he's still pretty young. I think he's 29, so it's not like you're getting a guy that's in his 30s or past his prime or whatever. He's going to be steady. You know what you get from him every night. You're not going to be at a disadvantage of Jaren Jackson has to miss time.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Clark has been a great backup for him, and then Adams just kind of holds down the fort. So,
Yep.
yeah, totally agree with your viewpoint on this team. It makes a lot of sense to keep him in the fold. You got to have some veteran presence on a team like this, even though your young talent is very, very talented. You
Yep.
have Ja, you have Desmond, you have these guys that are difference makers, but at the same time, that foundation needs to be kind of rounded out with guys like Adams, and they had Kyle Anderson before he went to Minnesota. Guys like that really kind of maintain that culture of toughness and just working hard and just doing the little things. So huge,
Yep.
big,
Yep.
big fan of that, and he does a lot of good things for this team. He will do that, I'm sure, over the next few seasons while he's under contract.
Agreed. Yeah. And I mean, frankly, if, Dylan Brooks, Danny Green are going to be coming off the books as well. So they can open up cap space, for the year. They can have max cap space for about 31 million. So they can still play in the game and still retain their big pieces, but it does eat into their, what they can offer out on the table.
True. So it does do that, but luckily for them, they have a lot of great homegrown talent. That's the great
Absolutely.
thing about Memphis. Like their front office is doing a great job when it comes to like mining these like deep draft picks that are reliable contributors. We're seeing that even this year. You look at guys like Kenny Lofton Jr. that they just drafted. He had a great summer league and he came in the preseason and he's had some great performances so far. So
Yep.
it seems like every year, Zaire Williams the year before, like they bring in players on the back end. So even if they do have to move off of guys like Dylan Brooks, let's say they just get a little too expensive for where their books are at the time, they have reliable talent coming through the pipeline behind these established veterans that can kind of take their place. So even though they're not going to be a free agent destination, so to speak, they don't necessarily need that because of the great job they've done drafting and just offering these guys they've gotten via trade these extensions like Adams and just maintain that solid core. So they put
Yep.
themselves in a great position to kind of carry this team into the future. And they don't have to do anything rash. That's what I love about this team. They have options. You can go homegrown talent. You can flip some of these assets for a bigger player. They can go a lot of different directions with this team. So that's why I think if I were a GM, and I think we talked about this in our group chat like a month or two ago, where it's like, here's 4 teams. Like, which 4 of these teams would you just love to have as a team you're overseeing for like the next 5 years? And I think Memphis was my number one. This was the big reason why they have options.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you love to see it for them.
Absolutely.
So extension talks, man. While we're on the topic, we're talking about guys getting extended, some big men getting extended, solid big men at that. The theme carries over into Larry Nance Jr. This guy was with the Lakers. He was with the Portland Trail Blazers. He's with the Pelicans, and
Cavs.
everywhere he's gone, like he's had injuries. That's just gonna be kind of a part of what you deal with when it comes to him, and how many games he plays. But on the flip side, like you can't do much better when it comes to a reserve forward. He's pretty decent defender. He's a great passer at the position. I think that's the big thing about him that makes him a little bit different than a lot of other forwards out there. And kind of like Adams, like he's just solid all around. You're not going to get outlier performances. You're not going to get madness like certain guys we're seeing right now in the NBA. We're going to touch on one of those guys here in a minute, but it's just reliable contributions. So when it comes to Larry Nance, it's actually about the same as Adams. 2 years, $21.6 million. So you go and look at the cap sheet for the Pelicans right now, and he's owed 9.6 this season, and then about 10.3 and then 11.2 over the next 2 years. So very solid deal, man. I mean, we're talking about mid-level money these days. Like that's what the mid-level is now. It's about 10 million. So that's a great way to utilize money like that, is to sign a guy like Larry Nance. So anything else to add about this guy? But I mean, it's just, that's the theme of the day, man. It's just solid big men. You can't really ask
Solid
for
big men
for that kind of money.
And I think with Larry, he is going to play a vital role to their closing lineup. I do think that as much as Zion, I don't know if they're going to he's not going to play a ton of center this year. I do think that he's going to be playing center this year. But I think Larry is going to really be the guy that unlocks the lineup versatility and closing lineups when it comes to him playing at the 5 and Zion at the 4. And, they have an array of wings that they could surround him. And, Larry has shown that he can be a switchable defender with his time in the Cavaliers. He did play some 3, and he really played well defending 3s out on the perimeter and switching out on the perimeter. Now his health and injury concerns have kind of taken and diminished his athleticism, but still he does a wonderful job of knowing where to be, great communicator. And obviously you touched on this, the passing and shooting has really developed as well.
Big time. Interesting point when it comes to his position distribution. When he was with Portland last season, this was pre-trade. 51% of his minutes were at center, 49% of his minutes were at the 4 position. So it was a 50-50 split before he got traded. And then he went back to more of that, primarily playing the 4 when he got to New Orleans. He played 65% of his minutes at the 4 and only 35% at the 5. So I think that's more of like a realistic distribution for him. Playing 35% at center. They do have Jackson Hayes. They do have Valanciunas that play a lot of minutes at center. So he's not necessarily needed at center the same way he was when he was in Portland. But it's still nice to have him kind of waiting in the wings in case one of those other 2 guys gets injured, and you just kind of want to spice things up a little bit, get a little bit more passing, get a little bit more ball movement from that position. So I like that versatility that he brings to this team. And that's something that I think across the roster, they have a lot of that. And that's really going to help them as they kind of continue to build this team and build towards the playoff run, which I think is going to be very interesting to watch, man. Like how far do you think this team can go with the core they developed here right now?
I was just about to say this, but they're going to be so much fun to watch. They're going to be so much fun to watch. Yes. But I think how far they get, I mean, they have, first and foremost, we have to lay down the fact that the Western Conference is going to be an absolute bloodbath this year, even the Eastern Conference. But the Western Conference specifically, I mean, their range of outcomes can be so wide. It's kind of like the Minnesota Timberwolves. We don't really know what to expect. They could win the number 1 seed if they really wanted to. With the Pelicans, I don't think that is their absolute ceiling. I mean, I don't want to write it off. They could definitely do it. They have the talent, but I do think that they're going to settle into being the middle of the pack team. Now, there's a few teams that may slip, Phoenix might slip a little bit, we have the Lakers, might be slipping a little bit as well. So there are spots available, but I do think that Utah, absolutely. Thank you, Utah, for sure, for sure. Thank you. So there is a spot open, and I do think that the Pelicans are ripe for taking that.
100%. And a quick look at their future outlook when it comes to the way they're distributing their money. I mean, they have several guys that are still under rookie contracts. Kerr Lewis Jr., Trey Murphy III, Herb Jones, not on Herb. My goodness, man. What a specimen he is for this team. What a great find in the draft. Excellent drafting by New Orleans the past couple of years. They're doing a great job there. So I can't wait to see where this goes. And, kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies, they're on the up. And their Bucks are getting more full with McCollum on board for more years extension. Ingram,
Zion, everyone is locked in. This is their roster moving forward.
This is it. They're all in. But I mean, with Zion on board, this is why I just pray that he plays 60 plus games, because there's no telling where they can go. Like this man, I've said this on multiple podcasts over the past year. Zion put on 27 a game on like 50% from the field in year 2. Dude, just think about that. Just
20 years old.
Yep.
I was watching, so I had to revisit because I felt like that season was so long ago.
It does.
It does, right? So I spent, how the NBA does amazing mixes of, the 30-minute montage of like the season's clips and for specific players or specific teams. And I went back and watched Zion. And honestly, I was like out of breath. I was just like, oh, wow. Like this is what the league will be having back, his presence, but most importantly, I think seeing him at media day, seeing how happy he was, seeing how energized he was, seeing how good of shape he was. I think it's really good for the league, obviously, but it's just really good to see him happy as well.
Everybody wins, man. The Pelicans
Everyone
wins. Except for maybe their rivals or like division rivals. That's probably the only L that's going to go around. But everybody else is going to be better for it, man. So I absolutely can't wait. He's one of the best finishers in the league. Highlight tape. They're doing a great job. Management there. It's another like this is another thing, man. I've noticed with these teams. It's like Memphis, New Orleans. These aren't huge markets. Like they're not free agent destinations. There's nothing glamorous about these cities, with all due respect. Sorry, if you're from Memphis or New Orleans listening to this, I mean no disrespect. Those are great cities. I would love to visit one day. They're just not LA. They're not Boston. They're not Miami. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But they're doing a great job of like building this from the ground up, because New Orleans, they lost Chris Paul and Anthony Davis within a decade, man. Like that's a lot of teams. It takes a long time to get back from something like that. Yeah. But they just stayed the course, just steadily built this thing, make good trades, good draft picks. And that's what you need, man. You don't need a big market. You don't need to trade for LeBron James and trade for, whoever, just make good sound decisions and you'll get there, man. So patience is key when it comes to building a team. So hats off to those organizations. They've done a fantastic job.
Agreed.
I think playtime is over, man. We've been soft here. We've been real kind of cool, calm, and collected, but I think it's time to ramp it up a notch. So
you just had to warm up a little bit,
Exactly. That was a shoot around, man. This is game time right here. So next topic of the day. I'm sure you've seen it. If you're listening to this, if you're watching, TMZ released a clip of what people in my group chat with the group I follow, Hoops Unwrapped. One of the guys referred to it as the Superman punch. So I think that's accurate. Just say the lunge and the form was on point, but unfortunately for Poole, he took the brunt of that punch, man. So
luckily he's not hurt. Luckily, no injuries, no facial fractures, no nothing.
At least it wasn't a Bobby Portis on Nikola Mirotic situation where I think he had an injury like to his eye or something like that.
Yep,
that would be rough.
Orbital fracture, if I'm mistaken. Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah,
I think it was. That sounds about right. But give me your unfiltered reaction to this incident, man. Draymond is a psycho, as you mentioned to me earlier. We all know this. But did he cross the line here? Is this more than just Draymond being Draymond? Did he actually take a step too far in displaying his passion and just being a vocal guy on the court? Break this down for me, man.
Man, I do think that he crossed the line. Like you just can't do that. like period. I don't know in what setting that is ever acceptable. I don't think there is a setting that is acceptable.
No. Maybe
Like if I
UFC, maybe that's
yeah.
all I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. If I punched one of my coworkers, I would be literally fired immediately. But taking a step back, thankfully no one was hurt. But I do think that now the reports, there's a bit of confliction, and here's where I am interested to see what comes out. But Steve Kerr and the Warriors were quite adamant about their support with Jordan Poole, and they understand the context that and the situation that he's under with extension talks, and how kind of it might be a little awkward, especially with the Tyler Hero news coming out that he's already locked in an extension. So there's a number in the air, and I'm sure what the Warriors think is much, much different than what Draymond what Jordan Poole thinks.
Right.
I do think the Warriors are not ready to be able to say, hey, we're just going to give you, not what you exactly like what the contract that Tyler Hero got, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But regardless of that, I do feel like most importantly that played a role. If you look at Chris Haynes reporting that the Warriors, actually pushed back on. They said, hey, there was a report. I think Steve Kerr made some comments saying that there was a report talking about how Jordan Poole was getting cocky, or, his behavior was, starting to, flare up in training camp. And because of this happened. And, I'm sure we'll get confirmation on that as more details come out. But I do think that, what Draymond did was absolutely wrong. I do think Jordan Poole, Draymond actually said this on his own podcast that a few months ago, he mentioned, he gave a story about Jordan Poole, and the moment Draymond realized JP is the real guy, like he's a real one, was in training camp. He mentioned that his first year he came in talking shit, excuse my language, but a whole bunch of shit. And with that, Draymond knew that, JP had the goods, had the game, had the talk, but JP had a way of getting under guys' skin. And he did that with Glenn Robinson. Glenn Robinson and JP got at it, they got into it. And so we've seen something like this before happen. And I do think that JP, there's a fine line between being very confident in your skill set, and then you suddenly cross that line into being a little too much, and it could be at the detriment of the team and the environment, and it might lead to actions like this where Draymond has a quick temper and something like this can happen. So we got to keep in mind that not only is Jordan Poole extension eligible, but Draymond Green is also extension eligible as well. And the Warriors have a very tough decision. As we all know, they have one of the highest tax bills, if not the highest tax bill in NBA history. The Clippers are right up there as well, but the Warriors are really breaking records, and ownership has been okay to pay it. But at one point or another, ownership will have to decide, do we have a limit? What is that line? And sadly, one of those guys might be the odd man out if the Warriors decide, hey, we have a fine line between how much we can pay and how much we can, offer to JP and DG.
Yeah, that's the challenge that every team faces, man, especially these championship teams, because you think of like what you need to gather together to comprise a champion, multiple high level players, high level starters, all-stars, superstars. I mean, just take a look at their top three players: Curry, Thompson, Green. You look at Wiggins. I mean, you're over 100 million easily with just those four players. So, this year already they're 40 million plus over the tax line, like not over the cap, the tax line. So that's where these tough decisions come into play. And I think that the situation is going to kind of exacerbate that situation. I think it's a big reason why Hero has gotten paid and JP has not. Because you look at the Heat situation, I mean, yeah, they're near the luxury tax, but it's nowhere near as bloated as the Warriors sheet. Like you said, I mean, they're tops in the league right now in that regard. So I think that the Warriors are starting to feel the real impacts of being in the repeater tax and all that good stuff. And I think it's made them hesitant to just offer out that extension because they still have to deal with Wiggins being a free agent next year. They have to deal with Draymond Green's impending free agency, most likely. I mean, he has $27 million next year player option he could opt out of. They have a couple of guys like Wiseman and Kuminga and Moody over the next couple of years that will probably need extensions.
Klay
So,
Thompson is extension eligible as well.
oh, geez. Yikes. I mean,
just
another thing they got to think about, man. So I think that this is going to cause them, one of those two guys, it's going to have kind of cause them to fade out of the Warriors' future. Green,
right.
Poole, I'm sure they don't want to like take sides in this issue, but when it comes to the future of the team, like you have to make tough decisions. When it comes down to it, I feel like you're not going to have both of those guys a part of this team over the next 2, 3, 4 years. So we'll see how this influences that. But I mean, totally on board with you, man. They got to do something about this incident, set a precedent for the rest of the team. Like it starts at the top. You got to hold those guys accountable that are the leaders of the team. I mean, Draymond's a multiple-time champion, fantastic player, defensive player of the year, all that good stuff. But you can't be allowed to just do these things and get away unscathed. You have to set an example. You hold the top players to a high standard. You hold the entire organization to that same standard. So whether that results in 2 gaming suspension, 5, 8, I'm not sure what that ends up being, but action needs to be taken so that the rest of the roster sees like, hey, this guy is a champion. He is one of the best players probably in franchise history. Even he is held to the standard and he will be punished fairly if he crosses these lines. So needs to be passed down to the rest of the roster. They need to know what is allowed and what's not allowed. So hopefully that's set that precedent here.
Now you said unfiltered, so I'm going to be a little unfiltered here.
But
Bob Myers had addressed this altercation yesterday, and he did mention that he doesn't anticipate. He was very careful with the words that he chose. He doesn't anticipate Draymond Green having the Warriors taking any disciplinary action against Draymond Green. They don't anticipate it. That doesn't mean it's out of the picture or not. With that being said, this came out before the video came out today. Now, the Warriors have launched an investigation internally to see how did that video even leak, what happened, who did what, yada, yada. With that, I do think that it would be odd for them to backtrack on their comments after the video because they were all there. They all saw it. It's training camp. Everyone's there. So it's kind of odd for them if Draymond Green does receive some sort of disciplinary action or games missed, whatever the case may be. I think you were right on the ball. I think it could range between 3 to 10 games. So that's kind of what I'm thinking if he were to miss anything. But I have a tough time thinking, the Warriors actually taking disciplinary action. I do think that he will receive it, but I think the optics of it will be kind of interesting because Bob has already, now he hasn't confirmed, but it's interesting. It is quite interesting because I don't, if the video didn't come out, I don't think that, because there's a visceral reaction when a video comes out, right?
Oh yeah,
like
for sure.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So if the video didn't come out, then the public and everyone involved, the reaction would be much different. I think it would be a case closed thing. This thing happened, and kind of move on. But I think things are much different now, much with the video out, and I'm interested to see if the Warriors actually change their train of thought on this altercation.
Me too. And that's the thing about social media and the day and age we live in. You do anything, someone's watching you. Everywhere you go, like whether it's the cameras or people or whatever, like you got to be at the top of your game, even at practice. I mean, this isn't a game. This isn't preseason game. It's just practice. And he was caught doing something like this, which is very severe. And of course, it's different, like you said, when it transitions over to video evidence. Because if it's just a report by Woj, okay, maybe it wasn't a punch. Maybe it was like they were shoving match, or maybe like he just kind of put his arms up or something like that. You can't really prove anything. So if they don't take action, it's like, okay, well, we don't know exactly what happened. Now we do because we've seen it. So now it's almost like I think they feel like now they almost have to do something.
They have to. They have to. Yeah.
Because it's like he did a Superman punch and we didn't do anything. Like, what does that say about us as an organization? You know?
Listen, you're killing me saying the Superman punch, man. So because he really did fly forward.
He did. I mean, he put everything he had into that.
Absolutely.
But that's a whole other thing, man. It's like, well, he was really trying to hurt this guy, which, you hate to see it. You hate to see it right before the season because that can have lasting effects on the locker room. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But yeah, in any case, action needs to be taken, even in Draymond's case, because like we saw a few years back, and that championship, it was influenced by him being out. So he's got to know when to kind of cool it and be a little more level-headed. You got to be more disciplined in that.
Yep.
So one last topic here, man, as we round this thing out. This gets me very excited and very nervous at the same time. I'll explain this. So Wembanyama, the alien, a specimen like we've never seen before. He's taller than Rudy Gobert. And he moves as fluidly as like a DeMar DeRozan. It doesn't make any sense. You mentioned before we went on the show about his flexibility, specifically with his hips and in the speed in which he kind of rotates his body when he's guarding on the perimeter and making moves and stuff. That's what makes him such a unique prospect. I'm sure you've heard of the company that's based out of California, the P3 Sports.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So they do all their testing out there. They do the biomechanics and all that good stuff. Very interesting, by the way, to kind of see how these players' bodies like react to different stresses and things like that. But I'm not sure if he's gotten out there. I would love to see the results from him being out there. They're going to say like for his body type, for his like height and everything put together, like he's probably in the like, because when you're going up and like they tell you like where you're at in terms of like how tall you are for your age and stuff.
Yep.
This is going to be a normal range. He's going to be like up here, like, you should not be able to do these things at 7'4", or whatever the heck he is. Like, You're just a freak of nature because you're in the 150th percentile of what you should be able to do at your size. Yep. So that makes for really exciting times when it comes to next season when he enters the NBA, and even now playing against the G League Ignite. But I'm nervous because how does this influence the teams like Utah, Houston, OKC, these guys that we know they're going to be at the bottom of the pack again this year? Yeah. How does that influence? We see this every year. There's always tanking. I call it stealth tanking because what they do is they get very extra cautious with their big time players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then they slowly kind of ramp up the minutes for their back end guys. Like Portland did this last season. I'm sure you saw that when they played guys at the back end of the roster like 20 plus minutes per game. I'm just afraid of what that's going to do for the product of the NBA as we pass the All-Star break. Is that something that you've thought about when it comes to prospects like Scoot Henderson and Victor? Like, they're so great. It would be awesome for a team to get them, but like, I'm afraid of like what lengths these teams will go to acquire them. So curious to hear what you think about that possible situation.
So you're essentially asking about the all-time tank race that we're going to see this year.
Oh yeah. It's coming. Boy. I hate to say it, but it's
coming, man. There is going to be some embarrassing behavior, and it's going to be all on purpose. Now, I believe Woj and Jonathan Gavoni, we're talking to some owners and team executives, and they made some comments about the fact that essentially this guy, roughly, if you have him on your franchise, executives are saying that, you will be increasing your team value by about $500 million minimum. And then second of all, you are going to be seeing the tank race for the ages. I don't think that we are going to see maybe I don't think we've ever seen a tank race like this before. Now, mind you, I can only speak for the basketball that I've seen growing up and from a historical context. Exactly. But, it's going to be truly insane. And I do think that now the lottery odds have changed. The play-in game has afforded playoff or teams more playoff positions and have given them the confidence to feel like, oh, maybe we can kind of slip in and have a successful season. So the variables have changed. The percentages of lottery for each lottery pick have changed as well. Yep. But I do think that regardless of it all, we are going to see some pretty insane behavior. And I know Adam Silver was reluctant to talk about the tanking. And I think a reporter asked a question about this because I think they're playing a game in Abu Dhabi. And he got asked about this, and he was very, again, careful with his words because he doesn't really, he's the commissioner. He doesn't really, he wouldn't like to talk about tanking, but it is a real thing. Yeah, it's going to get ugly.
Oh boy, dude, I'm so nervous, man. Like, I just want to see good quality basketball, and the league has taken steps in the past few years to give us better basketball as we pass like the 50, 60 game mark. But I fear that all the hype surrounding these guys, not one, but two guys, and even past that, because I hear that this class is supposed to be very strong in general.
Yep. The Thompson twins, Scoop.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of talent in here.
Facts. So I'm just like, what are we going to see? Like, I know we're going to see, I'm calling it now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will not play more than 5 games, just because I'm telling you, man, every year we get to like game 60, 70, he gets the ankle sprain. That's like a grade 3 or whatever the least serious one is. And they're like, oh, just send the rest of the season. Like, it's just crazy, man. Like Al Horford, sat like the last 20 games. Like, I just know it's coming. And I hate that for those organizations that, have great talent, but they're just going to, take opportunities away from good players. It's going to hurt their fan base in terms of like their involvement. They're going to feel like, why should I watch? We're just going to lose every game almost. And this is a much less prominent part of it, but the fantasy landscape is going to be altered because, if you pick someone from OKC, like Shai or Josh Giddey or someone like that, like, can I trust these guys to play a decent amount of games and not get shut down? Same for guys maybe in Houston or Utah, like Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, guys like that. So a lot of possible repercussions from this strong draft class beyond Victor. Like, he's a big reason for it, but I think across the board, we're going to see a lot of changes this season and beyond because of these great prospects.
Yep, I agree. You touched on the fantasy portion, which I never even thought about, but there's going to be a ton of feedback loops. And, frankly, it's really cool to see, Wembanyama and Scoop go at it on a stage like we did, going up against the G League Ignite, because, if this was a college game, it would have been insane. But, seeing the number 1 and number 2 picks and having the hype and him coming overseas here, I do think that this has set the foundation. And, social media truly is, it has its blessings and its curse. But with social amplifying so much of this, I think the press or the people now understand what they're expecting out of Victor, because it is going to be, now that we've seen them up close and seen them up against each other, we've never seen a game like that before, where two guys are going at it like that, and they're the number 1, number 2 pick, and roughly, I think there were like, what someone was saying on the newscast, that it was like 500 executives or like 200 executives in 200, I think it was, executives in
about right.
NBA arena. But absolutely insane. I think touching on Victor for a sec, just as a prospect in general, and we could touch on Scoot a little bit as well. But Vic, he came out and officially listed himself as 7'3", So
Yep.
7'3" is his official height. He came out and said that.
In barefoot.
In barefoot. Yep, exactly. Barefoot. 7'5", 7'4" with shoes. Unreal. But I always, like, when I watch him play, there are certain reflexes and anticipation plays that he has that are like otherworldly. But then I was watching him warm up. And watching him warm up was fascinating because watching a guy warm up, whether it's shooting drills, whether it's ball handling drills, whether it's flexibility, mobility, movement drills, he was doing very specific hip flexor exercises and hip mobility exercises. And that really made me think about the training environment that's around him. The team is putting him in a position to succeed, obviously, because he's doing drills like this. But you see it translate on the court because when he's out, we were talking about this early on before we hit record, but watching him defend on the perimeter and switch hips and switch sides, it is truly it's jaw-dropping. It's truly jaw-dropping. It's almost like seeing Mr. Fantastic out on the court. I thought watching Giannis back in his rookie year, I thought him and Victor like are like the Mr. Fantastics of the NBA. Yep. But I think Victor even more so. Just like, yeah, let me just take it up a notch. Oh yeah, I could shoot fade away, step back threes, jumping out of the baseline, and I could come out of pick and roll and hit you with a little quick jumper, or I could face up in the mid range. And he's also, what I love about his game is, all that aside, he's a great passer. And I think that once his handle starts to improve, and once his court awareness starts to improve, he's going to be a really, really great passer. And you are already seeing it with the hit-ahead passes, with the outlet passes, with the high-low passing as well. Just a sight to behold. And I tell everyone, try to watch as much as you can of him, because I think not only is it going to be really cool watching him in the league, but I think watching his growth. I think that's the coolest thing about guys coming into the league. I think seeing guys at their peak powers, that's always cool. That's always fun, and don't take it for granted. But for them to get from point A to point B to point C throughout their careers, that is the fun stuff. And they're very interested to see how his game evolves on a defensive perspective, because you can tell his anticipation was a little off. He may have been jittery at times because the NBA rules are different from the FIBA rues, and shot clock
that's true.
Different.
That's
so
a good point.
Definitely have to, adjust, but very excited.
I mean, it's tough to overstate the tools that he has, and you're diving into his defensive potential. Like, that's going to be crazy too. I mean, he had 9 block shots in 2 games against G League Ignite. And this is, like you said, like, he's adjusting to not being able to hit the ball off the cylinder once it hits. Like, there are a few differences, and it works the same way for us when we play internationally. We have to get used to that. He's doing the pretty much the same thing coming over here, and he was still able to have that much of an impact on the defensive end. So across the board, touched on his passing, which is underrated, it sounds like. The scoring is obviously there. He had 72 points in 2 games. Like, mind-blowing. He's going to be able to dominate inside and out. He barely has to get off the ground to throw him a dunk. Like, you just think about the easy points he's be able to get from there. So you blend that with the potential to be a great outside shooter. So he's going to utilize that part of the game that's expanding in the league. And I think if he has a work ethic, he pointed out 2 players that he really admires. He pointed out KD, and he pointed out Giannis. And this goes back to Giannis, what Giannis said the other day about skills and, how great you can be with skills in the NBA. And he said, like, the NBA is not about skills. It's more so about, like, that drive that you have. Like, how much do you love the game? How much do you want to get better? KD and Giannis, if you go back to their previous years when they started to ascend, constantly in the gym, constantly working on their skills, just 6 a.m. workouts, 5 a.m. workouts, just super dedicated. If Victor has anywhere near that level of dedication to the game, getting better, he's going to be one of the best we've seen. And health. Like, that's another thing that I've only seen a few people touch on.
Fingers crossed.
You've seen Chet already. I mean, it's scary, man. If it's anything below your waist, that's so scary for a big man. Like, Yao didn't last very long because of that. And I just really pray for his sake, for the sake of the league, that he stays healthy and he's able to actually capitalize on all the potential he has. So many different ways to look at this, but in a nutshell, he's a generational talent. I can't wait to see him on the court. Hopefully, there's not too much damage done in terms of these teams at the bottom of the league. But definitely keep an eye once we get to the All-Star break. Like, watch these teams closely, because you're going to watch those minutes played and watch the DMPs, because those are going to go crazy once we get past a certain point. But all that aside, love this kid, man. He's going to be a special talent in this league. Can't wait to see him.
And I love his competitive edge, man. I'm sure you saw his comments about Scoot. He was like, Scoot would be the #1 overall pick if I didn't exist, or if I wasn't born.
If I wasn't born,
That was a bar, bro. A bar.
I love that.
I love it. That's all I need to know about his drive, man. I'm sold.
Sir. He's confident. We can say that for him for sure. So it's going to be fun times, man. But
one more thing, man. One last thing on Victor. If you're ever wanting to follow coverage, Rafael Barlow, who we had on the No Trade podcast, shout out to him. He's had some phenomenal work doing, following the draft, the 2023 draft, Victor specifically. So go follow his work, man, because he's really putting out some really great intel.
Absolutely. Go check him out on Twitter.
Yeah.
He's checking out these prospects all the time. We were lucky to have him on our podcast back in the Summer League. He dropped some great insights. So go check out that episode back in Summer League if you want to learn more about what he brings to the table. But yeah, he's got a lot to look forward to, because he's a draft guy, and this next draft is going to be very strong. So excited for him for sure. So Ali, that brings us to the end of our conversation, man. I hope I hope you're good. I hope you didn't set your house on fire with all these burning takes we threw out there, man. But good time as always.
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Cool. Hopefully I didn't burn my house down, because I just moved in here, so that'd be unfortunate. But always a good time, man. Thanks for coming on, and let's keep the train rolling, man. It's gonna be a great season. Can't wait to can't wait to dive in.
Let's lock in, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir. We're going to be here all season long, guys. This is just a start. When we get into the regular season, we're ramping up to 2 podcasts a week. And Ali is going to be here dropping his absolutely chef's kiss graphics. So be sure to give him a look.
I'll be making me blush, man.
Hey, man, just try to give credit where it's due, man. I know it's not easy. So putting it out there. As I said before, Bet99 Sportsbook is here collaborating with us, so we're excited to keep that partnership going. And we have a lot more content coming your way, updating the website, getting things going for the new season. So be sure to stick with us and check out notradeclause.com for all your salary cap needs, draft needs, and more. There's a lot coming your way this season, guys, so we're excited to bring it to you. So until the next installment, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you back here, same place, for the next installment of the NTC pod. Catch you guys later.